A man who carries pain in silence is a man who walks through life with an invisible weight pressing down on his shoulders. He wakes up every morning, looks in the mirror, and tells himself that he's fine. He convinces himself that whatever hurt him, whether it was betrayal, rejection, loss, or failure, doesn't matter. He puts on his best face, steps out into the world, and performs his role like nothing ever happened. He laughs at the right moments, nods when he's supposed to, and continues to push forward, never allowing anyone to see the battle raging inside of him. But deep down, there's a heaviness that never quite leaves. It's there when he's alone in his car, staring out at nothing. It's there when he lies awake at night, trying to silence the thoughts that creep in as soon as the distractions fade. It's there in the moments of quiet when he suddenly feels the weight of everything he refuses to acknowledge. He tells himself that he has to be strong, that dwelling on emotions won't change anything, that time will heal it. But time alone doesn't heal wounds. Only what a man does in that time determines whether he heals or remains trapped in the same cycle of suppressed pain. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't want to seem weak. Society has told him from a young age that men should be tough, that real strength means pushing through without complaining, that emotions are a burden he can't afford to carry. And so he swallows his pain, pretending it doesn't exist, pretending he's moved on, pretending he's untouchable. But the truth is, what is not expressed is still experienced. He may not show his pain, but it shows up in his life in ways he doesn't even recognize. It shows up in how he distances himself from people without realizing it. He used to be open, used to trust easily, used to believe in the best in others. But now there's hesitation. There's a part of him that holds back. A part of him that no longer believes people will stay, that no longer believes in love or loyalty the way he once did. He convinces himself he's just being smart, that he's just avoiding unnecessary pain. But the reality is, he's operating from a place of hurt. He's shielding himself from being wounded again, but in doing so, he's also keeping himself from experiencing real connection, real trust, real joy. It shows up in his temper, in his reactions to the smallest things, the frustration that seems to come out of nowhere, the irritation over things that never used to bother him, the way his patience runs thin even in situations that don't warrant it. He tells himself it's just stress, just life, just the way things are. But deep down, it's the unresolved pain bubbling beneath the surface, finding small ways to release itself because he refuses to deal with it head on. It shows up in his habits, the way he throws himself into work to avoid thinking, the way he seeks distractions in entertainment, in social media, in anything that keeps his mind occupied. He's always busy, always moving, always chasing something. But if he ever stops long enough to sit with himself, the silence is deafening. That's when the thoughts creep in. That's when the emotions start to rise. And he doesn't want to deal with that. So he keeps running, keeps filling his days with noise and activity, hoping that if he moves fast enough, he can outrun the pain. But pain doesn't just disappear because it's ignored. It lingers. It shapes the way he sees the world, the way he sees himself. It erodes his confidence, whispering doubts in the back of his mind that he can't quite silence. It tells him he's not enough, that he's unworthy, that he's somehow broken beyond repair. It makes him question his decisions, his path, his future. He convinces himself that what happened doesn't affect him, but the truth is, it's affecting everything. The way he carries himself, the way he interacts with others, the way he views love, success, and even his own potential. It's like a shadow following him everywhere he goes, influencing his actions without him even realizing it. He's not truly free because part of him is still chained to the pain he refuses to acknowledge. And the worst part, no one around him even notices. He's so good at pretending, so good at keeping it all together that people just assume he's fine. They assume he's strong, that nothing phases him, that he has it all figured out. They don't see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he forces himself to keep going even when he feels like he's running on empty. They don't see the weight he carries because he refuses to let them. And so he suffers in silence, convincing himself that this is just how life is, that this is the price of being strong. But the truth is, real strength isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about facing it. It's about understanding that acknowledging emotions doesn't make a man weak. It makes him human. It's about realizing that suppressing pain doesn't make it go away. It only buries it deeper, where it festers and influences everything in ways he doesn't even recognize. A man can ignore his pain, push it aside, and convince himself that time will eventually erase it. But emotions do not simply disappear just because they are unspoken. Pain that is buried alive never dies. It lingers beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to resurface, whether in his thoughts, actions, or the way he interacts with others. He tells himself that he has moved on, that the betrayal, the heartbreak, the disappointment, or the failure no longer affects him. But deep inside, it remains, silently shaping the way he sees the world, the way he trusts, the way he loves, and even the way he believes in himself. Pain doesn't fade just because he stops thinking about it. It embeds itself into his subconscious, influencing his decisions in ways he may not even recognize. He may think that avoiding emotions makes him strong, that keeping everything locked inside proves his resilience, but in reality, it weakens him from within. A wound left untreated doesn't heal. It festers, it spreads, and over time, it starts affecting every area of his life. The longer he suppresses it, the more control it gains over him, dictating his actions without him even realizing it. He may convince himself that he is fine, that what happened in the past no longer matters. But then, out of nowhere, something triggers him. A conversation, a familiar place, a certain look in someone's eyes. Suddenly, the emotions he thought he had buried rush back with full force, as if no time had passed at all. It's not that the pain ever left. It was always there, waiting for the right moment to remind him that it was never truly resolved. This is why people find themselves reacting in ways they don't understand. A man who has been betrayed might find himself questioning the loyalty of people who have never wronged him. A man who has been abandoned might keep others at a distance, afraid to let them get too close. A man who has been humiliated might overcompensate, constantly trying to prove himself, even when no one is doubting him. He thinks he is making rational decisions, but in reality, he is simply being controlled by wounds he never took the time to heal. He tells himself he has let go, but the truth is letting go is not the same as ignoring. Letting go means confronting the pain, understanding it, and choosing to free himself from its grip. Ignoring it means allowing it to take root in his mind, where it silently influences everything he does. The way he sees himself, the way he trusts others, the way he handles stress, the way he responds to challenges. All of it is shaped by the emotions he refuses to acknowledge. Pain has a way of disguising itself. It doesn't always show up as sadness or grief. Sometimes it shows up as anger, quick, irrational reactions to minor inconveniences. Other times it manifests as detachment, a reluctance to connect with others on a deep level. It can even appear as perfectionism, where he constantly pushes himself beyond his limits, trying to prove his worth because deep down, he still carries the fear of not being good enough. It seeps into his relationships, making him guarded even when he doesn't need to be. He finds it hard to trust, hard to be vulnerable, hard to open up, even when the people in his life have done nothing to hurt him. He doesn't realize it, but the pain from his past is dictating his future. The very thing he is running from is the thing controlling him the most. Some men drown themselves in work, thinking that if they stay busy enough, they won't have time to feel. Others distract themselves with temporary pleasures, numbing the pain with entertainment, alcohol, or meaningless relationships. But distractions are not solutions. They only provide temporary relief, like placing a bandage over a wound that still needs to be cleaned. The problem is never truly gone, it's just being ignored. And one day it will demand to be acknowledged. The mind is powerful, but it is not designed to suppress pain indefinitely. It will find ways to release it, whether through anxiety, stress, burnout, or even physical symptoms. A man may not cry over his pain, but his body will show signs of it. Insomnia, tension, constant fatigue. He may not talk about his emotions, but his actions will reflect them. Short-tempered, lack of motivation, self-sabotaging behavior. The pain that he refuses to process will continue to live within him, affecting his health, his relationships, and his overall sense of peace. He may think he is escaping his past by avoiding it, but in reality, he is carrying it with him everywhere he goes. The only way to be free from it is to confront it, to acknowledge its presence, and to process it in a way that allows him to move forward without carrying the burden of suppressed emotions. A man who suppresses his emotions believes he is protecting himself. He convinces himself that if he doesn't think about it, if he doesn't talk about it, if he doesn't let anyone see it, then eventually the pain will disappear. But what he doesn't realize is that emotions do not vanish simply because they are ignored. They are stored deep within him, shaping his thoughts, influencing his reactions, and dictating the way he navigates life. The longer he suppresses them, the more power they gain over him, suddenly guiding his choices in ways he may not even be aware of. He tells himself that talking about his pain is pointless, that it won't change the past. He believes that acknowledging his emotions will only make them worse, that facing them head on will only reopen wounds that he has worked so hard to close. So he keeps pushing forward, believing that if he buries himself in work, distractions, or even silence, he will eventually forget. But the mind does not forget what has not been processed. The subconscious holds on to every experience, every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment, and it finds ways to remind him of what he refuses to deal with. It shows up in his habits, the way he avoids certain places, certain people, certain conversations, because they trigger something deep inside him. It shows up in the way he distances himself from others, not because he doesn't want connection, but because he's afraid of getting hurt again. It shows up in the way he overreacts to minor things, as if the frustration he's expressing in that moment is about something much bigger than the situation at hand. He thinks he is in control, but in reality, his pain is controlling him. It dictates the way he views himself, the way he interprets situations, the way he responds to the world around him. He doesn't realize that by refusing to face his emotions, he is allowing them to shape his reality. He tells himself that he has moved on, that the past no longer affects him, but his actions say otherwise. The way he keeps people at a distance, the way he avoids vulnerability, the way he hesitates to trust, all of it stems from wounds that were never given the chance to heal. When a man refuses to process his pain, it manifests in different forms. Sometimes it turns into cynicism, a belief that nothing ever truly works out, that people are not to be trusted, that life is just a series of disappointments waiting to happen. Other times it turns into overcompensation. He becomes obsessed with proving himself, with achieving more, with being the best at everything he does. Not because he enjoys it, but because deep down he is still trying to validate his worth. And then there are times when it manifests as complete emotional detachment. He stops feeling altogether, convincing himself that if he doesn't care, then nothing can hurt him anymore. He believes that by numbing his emotions, he is protecting himself from future pain. But what he doesn't realize is that he is also blocking himself from experiencing true joy, true love, true fulfillment. The same walls that keep the pain out also keep the good things in life from reaching him. He becomes stuck in a cycle of self-preservation, living in a constant state of defense, never allowing himself to truly open up, to truly experience life as it is meant to be. People around him may not see it. They may think he has everything together, that he is strong, that nothing ever affects him. But deep inside, he knows the truth. He knows the exhaustion of carrying emotions that were never expressed. He knows the weight of pretending to be unaffected when, in reality, the pain is still there, buried beneath layers of denial and silence. He knows what it feels like to smile in public while feeling empty in private. The mind is not designed to carry unprocessed pain forever. Eventually, it begins to take a toll on his mental health, on his physical well-being, on his ability to enjoy life. He may not realize it, but stress, anxiety, and even certain physical ailments can stem from emotions that were never dealt with. The body keeps score, and the longer he suppresses his pain, the more it manifests in different ways. He may think he is escaping his past, but in reality, he is dragging it with him into his future. Every decision he makes, every relationship he enters, every opportunity he considers is influenced by the emotions he refuses to acknowledge. The only way to truly be free is to confront what he has been running from, to face the pain instead of avoiding it, to process it instead of suppressing it. There is a silent war that rages within a man who refuses to acknowledge his emotions. He moves through life as if nothing affects him, wearing a mask of strength, but deep inside there is a storm brewing. He tells himself that vulnerability is weakness, that emotions are distractions, that the past is irrelevant. So he builds walls around himself, convincing himself that as long as he remains indifferent, he cannot be hurt again. But pain does not disappear simply because it is ignored. It does not lose its grip just because he refuses to talk about it. Instead, it finds new ways to manifest, ways that he may not even recognize until it is too late. He tells himself he is fine. He wakes up every morning, goes through the motions of his daily life, handles his responsibilities, and keeps moving forward. But there are moments, brief, fleeting moments, where he feels the weight of everything he has been suppressing. A quiet evening alone, a song playing in the background, a sudden memory that creeps in when he least expects it. It's in those moments that the truth tries to surface, but he quickly pushes it down again, convincing himself that he doesn't have time to dwell on the past, that he needs to stay strong, that emotions are nothing more than unnecessary burdens. What he doesn't realize is that by refusing to process his emotions, he is allowing them to control him in ways he doesn't even understand. The way he reacts to certain situations, the way he perceives other people's actions, the way he handles stress, it is all influenced by the pain he refuses to confront. He may think he has moved on, but his subconscious mind holds on to every unhealed wound, shaping his thoughts, his behaviors, and even his relationships. He becomes defensive even when no one is attacking him. He finds himself pushing people away, not because he doesn't want connection, but because deep down he is afraid of being hurt again. He has been through disappointment before, and he has trained himself to expect it. So rather than risk vulnerability, he chooses isolation. He convinces himself that he is better off alone, that depending on others is dangerous, that trusting people only leads to pain. This unprocessed pain doesn't just affect his relationships with others, it also affects the way he sees himself. He carries the weight of past failures, past rejections, past betrayals, and without even realizing it, these experiences shape his self-image. He starts to believe that he is not enough, that he is unworthy, that no matter how hard he tries, he will never truly be accepted or understood. He might not say these things out loud, but they are there, lurking beneath the surface, influencing his every decision. He throws himself into work, into distractions, into anything that keeps him too busy to think. He convinces himself that success will make up for the pain, that achieving more will erase the emptiness he feels inside. But no matter how much he accomplishes, it never seems to be enough. Because external achievements cannot heal internal wounds. No amount of money, status, or recognition can fill the void created by suppressed emotions. Sometimes the pain manifests as anger. He finds himself snapping over small things, reacting with frustration, even when there is no real reason for it. He doesn't understand why he feels this way, why he always seems to be on edge, why minor inconveniences trigger such strong emotions. But it is not the present moment that is causing this reaction. It is the accumulation of everything he has suppressed. The years of ignoring his pain, of pretending to be unaffected, of refusing to confront his emotions have built up inside him, and now they are demanding to be acknowledged. Other times, the pain manifests as complete detachment. He becomes emotionally numb, indifferent to the world around him. He stops feeling excitement, joy, or passion for anything. He goes through life on autopilot, doing what is expected of him, but never truly engaging. He may even convince himself that this is normal, that this is just the way life is. But deep down, there is a part of him that remembers what it was like to feel, to truly experience life without the heavy burden of unresolved emotions. The weight of unprocessed emotions does not just disappear over time, it builds. it accumulates. And if left unchecked, it begins to affect his health, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Stress becomes a constant companion. Tension settles into his body, and exhaustion follows him everywhere he goes. The mind and body are connected, and what affects one will inevitably affect the other. He may not realize it, but the headaches, the fatigue, the inability to sleep at night, these are all signs that his body is carrying the weight of emotions he has refused to confront. But still, he tells himself that he is fine, that he doesn't need to talk about it, that he doesn't need to deal with it, that as long as he keeps moving forward, the past will eventually fade away. But pain does not fade when it is ignored. It lingers, it grows, and it waits for the right moment to remind him that it has never truly left. He has mastered the art of pretending. Every day he walks through life with a carefully constructed image, one that convinces the world that he is fine, that nothing affects him, that he is untouchable. He carries himself with confidence, maintains his composure, and never lets anyone see what is really going on inside. He has trained himself to suppress his emotions so well that even he starts to believe the illusion. But deep inside, where no one can see, there's a storm that refuses to be silenced. The pain doesn't disappear just because he doesn't acknowledge it. It lingers beneath the surface, influencing his thoughts, his decisions, his relationships. He may not talk about it, he may not even think about it consciously, but it is always there. It shows up in the way he hesitates before trusting someone, in the way he pulls back when emotions get too real, in the way he avoids certain conversations or situations that remind him of past wounds. He tells himself that strength means moving forward without looking back, that the past is behind him and there is no point in revisiting it. But true strength is not in avoidance. It is in facing what is uncomfortable, in acknowledging what hurts, in processing what has been buried for too long. Avoidance does not heal wounds. It only allows them to fester. And the longer he pretends, the heavier the burden becomes. He distracts himself with work, with responsibilities, with anything that keeps him too busy to dwell on his emotions. He tells himself that as long as he stays productive, as long as he keeps pushing forward, the pain will eventually fade. But emotional wounds do not operate on time alone. They do not disappear simply because days, months, or even years have passed. Healing requires awareness, and awareness requires the willingness to confront what has been ignored. At night, when the world is quiet and the distractions are gone, the weight of everything he has suppressed begins to creep in. It may come in the form of overthinking, of replaying past experiences in his mind, of imagining different outcomes for situations that cannot be changed. Or it may come as a heavy emptiness, an unshakable feeling that something is missing, that no matter how much he accomplishes, no matter how much he distracts himself, the void remains. He convinces himself that this is just the way life is. That feeling disconnected, feeling emotionally distant, feeling constantly on edge is normal. But it is not. It is the result of carrying pain that has never been acknowledged. It is the result of believing that vulnerability is a weakness rather than the key to true freedom. When he interacts with others, he does so cautiously. He may be present physically, but emotionally he is guarded. He keeps people at arm's length, not because he doesn't want connection, but because he is afraid of what it might expose. He has spent so long pretending that he is unaffected, that he fears what will happen if he allows someone to see the truth. What if they see his pain? What if they realize that behind the strength, behind the confidence, there is a man who has been silently battling his own demons? So he continues to pretend. He laughs when expected. He engages in conversations. He plays the role that the world has come to expect from him. But deep inside, he knows the truth. He knows the exhaustion that comes from constantly suppressing his emotions. He knows the weight of carrying wounds that have never been given the chance to heal. He knows the loneliness of feeling misunderstood, even when surrounded by people. the body keeps score. Suppressed emotions do not simply stay locked away in the mind, they manifest physically. He may find himself feeling constantly fatigued, struggling to sleep, experiencing unexplained tension in his body. He may turn to habits that temporarily numb the pain. Excessive work, alcohol, unhealthy relationships, anything that allows him to escape, even if only for a moment. But these are not solutions. They are distractions, and distractions only last so long. Every suppressed emotion is energy that remains trapped within him. And that energy does not simply disappear, it needs an outlet. If it is not processed in a healthy way, it will find its own way out. Sometimes it manifests as anger. He finds himself losing his temper over small things, reacting with frustration when the situation does not warrant it. Other times it manifests as complete detachment. He stops feeling altogether, convincing himself that it is better to feel nothing than to risk feeling pain. He may think he has control over his emotions, but the truth is his emotions have control over him. By suppressing them, by avoiding them, by pretending they do not exist, he is allowing them to dictate his life in ways he does not even realize. They shape his perception, influence his choices, and limit his ability to experience life fully. The mind is powerful, but it cannot heal what it refuses to acknowledge. Suppressed emotions remain stored, waiting for a moment to be released. And they will be released, whether through sudden breakdowns, through patterns of self-sabotage, or through physical manifestations of stress and anxiety. The only way to truly free himself is to stop pretending, to stop running, to stop burying his pain beneath layers of distractions. He has spent years convincing himself that pain is something to be ignored, that emotions are a burden rather than a signal. He has built a life around control, around the idea that as long as he does not acknowledge his emotions, they cannot hurt him. But emotions do not disappear simply because they are unspoken. They do not dissolve just because they are ignored. Instead, they grow, they intensify, and they find new ways to make themselves known. At first, he tells himself that nothing is wrong. He moves through life the way he always has, focused, determined, relentless in his pursuit of success. He believes that if he just keeps moving forward, everything else will sort itself out. He works harder, stays busier, fills every moment with something productive so that he never has to sit still long enough to hear the thoughts creeping in from the back of his mind. He convinces himself that he is simply being disciplined, that emotions are distractions, that life is about action, not reflection. But life has a way of forcing unresolved pain to the surface. No matter how much he tries to suppress it, there will always be moments that trigger something deep within him. A conversation, a song, an unexpected memory. These things have the power to unlock emotions he thought he had buried long ago. And in those moments, he feels it, that sharp pull in his chest, the weight pressing down on him, the reminder that no matter how much he tries to outrun his pain, it is still there waiting for him. The truth is, healing is not about avoidance. It is not about ignoring the past and pretending that it never happened. Healing is about recognition. It is about looking at the wounds that have shaped him and making the conscious decision to address them, rather than allowing them to dictate his life from the shadows. It is about understanding that pain is not the enemy, denial is. Suppression is. The refusal to acknowledge reality is what keeps him trapped in a cycle of silent suffering. The fear of facing his emotions is rooted in the belief that once he lets them in, they will consume him. He worries that if he allows himself to feel, he will break, that if he acknowledges his pain, it will become too much to bear. But emotions are not meant to destroy him, they are meant to guide him. They are signals from within telling him what needs attention, what needs healing, what needs to be released. Ignoring them does not make him strong, it keeps him stuck. There is a difference between feeling emotions and being controlled by them. He has spent so long avoiding pain that he has never given himself the chance to truly process it. He assumes that to feel is to suffer, but suffering does not come from emotions. It comes from resisting them. The longer he fights against his own inner world, the more exhausted he becomes. He has been carrying the weight of his past for so long that he no longer remembers what it feels like to be truly free. He has convinced himself that he must always be on guard, that to let his walls down is to invite destruction. But the walls he has built to keep pain out have also kept healing away. They have kept love away. They have kept joy away. They have kept him locked inside his own mind, trapped by the very defense mechanisms he thought were protecting him. Healing does not happen all at once. It is not a single moment of revelation, but a series of small decisions. The decision to stop running. The decision to sit with his emotions rather than push them away. The decision to acknowledge what hurts rather than pretending that nothing does. It is in these moments of honesty that real transformation begins. He must learn to trust himself again, to believe that he is strong enough to face what he has been avoiding. Strength is not in denial, it is in acceptance. It is in standing face to face with his pain and refusing to let it define him. It is in recognizing that vulnerability is not weakness, but the gateway to true freedom. He must stop looking at emotions as something to be conquered and start seeing them as something to be understood. He has spent years training himself to suppress, to ignore, to disconnect. But healing is about reconnection. It is about learning to listen to himself, to honor his emotions rather than reject them. There is no shame in feeling. There is no shame in acknowledging pain. The only shame is in allowing it to dictate his life without ever confronting it. The journey to healing begins when he decides that he is worth more than the weight he has been carrying. It begins when he stops pretending, stops avoiding, and starts allowing himself to truly feel.